between stage 2 and 3. 2012, a Connexus ebook, another maturity model. Companies get stuck between level 1 and 2. 2013, supply chain insights, Laura Cesare, 57% of companies don't get further than stage 2 of 5-stage maturity model. And Bricks Matter, also written by Laura Cesare, mentioned that 36% of companies are stalled or moving slowly. Now, whatever S&OP maturity model we use, it seems to stall. I do myself some research online, which I call the S&OP Pulse Check. I've done it for 5 years, and in 2015 I asked practitioners, is there a difference between S&OP and IBP? 48% says yes, 32% says no, and 20% actually doesn't know. So for me that means we have a definition issue. If I then ask, do you think we need more standards, industry standards, a whopping 71% says yes. So basically these are S&OP practitioners that don't really know sure what the difference is between S&OP and IBP. And if we don't know that there's S&OP practitioners, now how can we get other people on board? I think that is we have a definition issue there, and there's no industry standard around S&OP or IBP really. There's an innovation issue. If I ask practitioners, do you think there's enough coordinated process innovation? 64% says no. If I ask, do you think there's enough innovation in S&OP systems? 62% says no. So there's a perceived lack of S&OP innovation. But we keep just blaming the senior leaders. The main roadblock in implementing S&OP is senior leadership support. I ask this every year, and for the last 5 years, it is either number 1 or number 2 in the reasons why S&OP get blocked. But is that really true? I think it is time for something new, for another approach. Supply chain management exists for 30 odd years, so does S&OP. And in those years, we've been really good in developing it. And we've mostly done it from, from a process, KPI, logic, data system driven, more of a left brain environment. My point is really, we have to start thinking a bit more with our right brain. It's also about feelings, it's about emotions, it's about the non-verbal part, it's about the soft part. And I think actually that's where most value can be found in S&OP or even supply chain improvement. So why are those behaviors important? If we look from a strategic level, so really top down, if I take a model from Collins and Porras from their article Built to Last, was written in 1996, they articulate a company vision. Company vision exists according to them from core values and a core purpose. Core purpose is really the reason for being, the reason why you get out of bed every morning. It's bigger than yourself. The core values is what you're all about. And both those purpose and values drive company-wide behavior. Now, what they say, and again, I suggest you read the article, it's a great article, embedded company behaviors will drive a sustainable company culture over time, which lasts over time. So behaviors will drive your company culture. So from a strategic perspective and to reach a vision, actually as a company, behaviors are massively important. And I would even go further. I'll say that future competition is between cultures rather than between supply networks. The flow of information, the quality of decision making, the speed of decision making, horizontal and vertical information flow is vital for supply networks. Great cultures are very good in information sharing and quick and decide quick under pressure. So hence, I mean, Peter Drucker said it, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah, well, from where I sit, my point of view, the competition of the future will be between cultures rather than supply networks. Now, if we go from a top-down perspective, I use 2 psychometric tools. I'm accredited to use those tools, and the research behind that on the individual level, the constructive thinking and behaving behind those tools shows an improvement in ability to manage stress, life satisfaction, workplace satisfaction. So it's not about just performance, it's about health and well-being, and performance will follow. Better decision making on the stress. That's all on individual level. On the organizational level, constructive thinking and behavior shows better work relationships, better external adaptability, so we change faster to external changes. Better inter-unit coordination, which is from S&OP perspective, of course, very important because we try to work between functions or business units. And again, better decision making and open to risks. So there's a lot of research that actually suggests that constructive thinking and behaving has great positive impacts on the individual and the organization. Now, this is a photo from a workshop from Oliver White I joined 4 years ago when I was still working in my last company. And the question was asked of 40 participants, you know, what are the critical success factors in integrating IBP? As you see, most people say people and behaviors. Couple process, couple of tools, but the bulk is people and behaviors. So S&OP practitioners, they really think behaviors are important. But again, then if I ask them, do you think they are addressed enough in S&OP implementations? 68%, and asked us in October last year, 2015, 68% says no. Now if I go to, and as you do as well, probably you go to conferences, and one consultancy after another consultancy talks about how important behaviors are, but not a lot have them really in the value proposition and come up with solutions. So hence that's where my framework will come in, because behavioral change needs significant dedication. I show you two quotes here, one from Tom Wallace, which I think, you know, we all have to respect. The man has 35 odd years of S&OP experience and he is an S&OP pioneer. However, on LinkedIn a couple of years ago, I had a bit of a debate with him, as he mentioned, better teamwork follows S&OP just as night follows day. And I thought, is that really true? Is the world so simple? And I actually think it's not. If your company is screwed up, if your company is one of fear, implementing S&OP won't change that company culture. It needs a lot of extra hard work and dedication. And that's, you know, it's up to you where you decide where you sit in between those two quotes. But I'm definitely believe that S&OP won't change the culture by itself. It can be a vehicle for change, but you need a lot of extra work. So that's why I come to my S&OP coaching framework, and basically this is the first time I openly talk about this. I only created the thing 3 weeks ago. Why did I do that? Because I had a conversation, I write a blog, Supply Chain Trends, and a well-known partner from a well-known consultancy reacted to my blog, and we had a conversation on coaching, behavioral coaching, and he mentioned we do behavioral coaching, and I said, well, I don't think you do, or we have a different definition of coaching. So hence I created this coaching framework, which is of course up for feedback and improvement. But it will show that coaching is more than just telling people how to behave. As a coach, you know, what we see is the top of the iceberg, how we behave. Behind that is however old you are, 30, 40, 50 years of life experience, of values you're used to, the culture you're from, your self-thoughts, your own mindset, what your beliefs are, your obstacles you have in life. All that stuff is under the tip of the iceberg. And what we observe is the behaviors, but often we want to change behaviors. We have to dig deep and really go underneath the surface to improve those behaviors. And I think sometimes coaching is just seen as telling people you have to behave like this, and I know from experience it is a little bit more complicated than that. So I think, yeah, the iceberg analogy is a great one to show that difference. Now my S&OP coaching framework is 4 steps, and the first step is really coach to change. It's in the early days of initial S&OP change, in the start of an S&OP implementation, and the objective is really to manage this initial S&OP change and create critical mass in what I call basic S&OP behaviors. So to lead in this change, or to coach in this change, I'll go through the steps which I think are important in this first step. So we know S&OP requires behavioral change. We have our silos, and we have to start thinking horizontally instead of vertically. By the way, holistic and horizontal thinking is a right brain activity. But as humans, we're just very confident in our own silo. You know, we talk the same language, we understand the KPIs, we know how we're being measured, and all of a sudden there's S&OP. And all of a sudden you sit in meetings and you need to have public debate with other functions and show your own KPIs and show your own results, which I call the S&OP behavioral principles. You need to all of a sudden share information publicly, have this open debate, be transparent, and show some functional cooperation, which might have been there before you implemented S&OP, but you never really sat down so structurally with other functions to actually discuss each other's plans. Now, for some people this is not an issue, but for other people this actually create resistance, and this can be on different levels. And there's a great model which I use, which I'll come back to, but change can be hard. That's just what I want to mention here. The average success rate is 30%. That's the first time this was published was by John Cotter in 1996 in Leading Change, and it has been reconfirmed in other research. McKinsey in 2009 did a questionnaire from over 3,000 CEOs, came with the 30%, and in the book Beyond Performance, again this 30% is mentioned. So if success rate of change is 30% of major transformation, S&OP is a major transformation. Do we expect better, worse? I think we're lucky if we're 30% successful, and hence why it's so important to lead in this this S&OP change and to coach people through that. A great way I found from Rick Maurer, which is really a great change thought leader, from his book Beyond the Wall of Resistance. For me, he made for the first time change resistance simple. He identified 3 levels of change resistance. I don't get it, which is knowledge-based. I don't like it, which is fear-based. I don't like you, which is relationship-based. And I added the 4th one. I like it, but, so I like the change, but I don't have enough time or resources spent on it. I'm too busy. If you think through and you go back to the workforce and you have a change program or implement a project, you'll find how many times you actually can segment change resistance in those 4 levels. I would say like 90% of the people you can put in these levels if you map your stakeholders. Go a little bit deeper. I don't get it is really knowledge based. So what's the solution there? That's the left brain approach. We teach people what S&OP is and what S&OP is about. Why do we do it? What are the advantages, etc., etc. So it's really just education. I don't like it. It's fear-based, and this is much more complicated, because this is people who think they might lose face. They might lose status. They might fear they lose their job. So it's a totally different reaction. It's an emotional reaction to implementing something, in this case S&OP, all of a sudden having your KPIs public, open in terms of in front of other functions, yeah, some people resist that based on fear because they have a fear of failure. What do we often do if people resist in level 2? We still start to educate them, tell them what the process is. That's the wrong approach. And that approach there in the level 2 resistance really need to be on an emotional and a behavioral level, and that's more a right brain approach. And I'll come back to that later. I don't like you. They might like you, but they might not like your manager, or they might not like the fact that supply chain is leading S&OP change. So that's really, or they prefer to have done it themselves, or they don't really trust your capabilities. So that's the I don't like you level of resistance. And again, the number 4 is, okay, I like it, I support you, but I have so much on, I don't have the time and resource. So those people show, although there is an interest, they maybe don't show the commitment you would expect, and that can be solved by addressing time and resources, where in the relation-based, it's more solved on an emotional level. So there's 4 different types of change, where a lot of resistance, where a lot of your stakeholders can be segmented into, and they have different approaches to tackle. Now, just some tips there from change perspective. This S&OP leadership quadrant, which maybe can be better called an S&OP stakeholder quadrant. I published that in 2013 in an article in the Journal of Business Forecasting. It's just a simple way of saying, of mapping your stakeholders, your key stakeholders, and their type of resistance. If you have, and the right top quadrant, S&OP leaders, who both support process and support openly the behaviors, like open communication, proactive cross the silos, share the data, they're transparent. If you have them, nurture them, cherish them, and ask them to support you to influence other key stakeholders. You can have people that maybe support the process, but they have some, and there might be some fear there in being transparent, sharing information, and that needs a different level of addressing. S&OP ignorers, so you might have people who don't believe in the process and they don't show the right behaviors. Okay, that's a hard nut to sell. And then you have the cultural supporters who basically, they show the right behaviors, and they show maybe level 1 resistance. They just need that S&OP process education. So when you go into that S&OP change, think about those levels of resistance and think about mapping your stakeholders in a quadrant like this, and follow that over time. Yeah, this is maybe an open door, but I put it in anyway. I see so many change efforts without a structured change plan. I always fall back to John Kotter. Don't always use all the 8 steps, but really, use it in terms of your change efforts. The other thing I really want to mention a communication plan. Part of your change plan needs to be a communication plan, and that's basically what I write about in my last article in Supply Chain Magazine, and I will publish an article in the American magazine Foresight, which go a bit deeper into the communication part of S&OP. But it's really S&OP, the output of S&OP is really an opportunity to engage your employees about progress made, about gaps to budget, about status to the strategy. Use that information to engage your employees, and maybe in the implementation phase, use that information to say how S&OP helps in improved visibility and performance. I believe the communication plan is one of the undervalued and unutilized things in S&OP as a whole. If we then go to the second step of the coaching framework. So we assume now that we have a critical mass in those behavioral principles as transparency and sharing your KPIs and some meeting discipline. The objective of sustainable S&OP for me is really make strong foundations of trust and communication. So really these two areas need to be addressed in the business to build sustainable S&OP. Now, why is trust important? You might have heard or read the book The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. Yeah, he gives great examples where trust is low, speed goes down, costs go up, and where trust goes up, speed goes up, and costs go down. And if you see the examples of low trust cultures and high trust cultures, I mean, it's very easy to imagine that, okay, S&OP flows better and works better, of course, in high trust cultures. But again, trust, it needs time to be built. It doesn't come by itself. It needs dedication. Again, just having an S&OP meeting, it's by itself doesn't necessarily build trust, I believe. On a team level, why trust is important, I always find this a great example from Lencioni, the 5 dysfunctions of a team. What he says is without the absence of, without trust, there's a fear of conflict, a lack of commitment, the avoidance of accountability, and an inattention to result. So how does that translate to S&OP? Well, the absence of trust, there will be less engagement to make cross-functional plans. They stay siloed. Within meetings, there is a lack of challenge of those cross-functional plans to make it better. So once you have an agreed plan, it's not really agreed, and there's a lack of commitment to execute that agreed plan. And well, you go up the ownership to make plans, work across functions, there's avoidance there, and the result of it, of the plans which are made in a meeting, people say, well, yeah, we sort of agreed, but after the meeting we had another meeting, so yeah, that wasn't really my plan. So trust as well on individual as in team performance. I hope with these examples I show you that yeah, it is really important to make S&OP sustainable. So why is communication important? Well, first of all, practitioner himself think that it's the main reason to implement S&OP. Last 5 years that I asked this question, improved cross-functional communication, I think all 5 times was at number 1. So the practitioner really feels that S&OP is about communication, which is, I mean, a good reference and a good foundation to build on. But if you go into the detail and some literature, which I've been studying for the article which will be published in July in Insights, it's vitally important in strategy execution as well. Change management we know, in the middle on the left, one of the 8 steps for change from Kotter is communication, which 20 years later on the right side in the middle is by McKinsey seen as one of the top 3 impacts on business transformation. But in strategy execution literature, more and more it comes back as bad communication as a strategy killer, or good correlation is now directly correlated to better strategy execution and profit. That's the research done by Radomska on 200 Polish companies that shows a direct correlation there, which is pretty significant, I think. But also informal communication is getting more and more important in strategy implementation. So yeah, there's a lot of proof that communication, trust and communication is important to create sustainable business results. So to sustain S&OP, I say we need critical mass in both trust and communication. But in my research from 5 years ago, 2011, I asked this question, what's your satisfaction on trust and communication? and I segmented that by the experience with S&OP, less than 2 years, between 2 and 5 years, or more than 5 years. And you see the level of satisfaction grows slightly with S&OP experience, but it stays below 50%. And I really wonder if that's sustainable. If S&OP practitioners, less than half of them says that they're satisfied with trust and communication, this doesn't feel to me like a sustainable foundation to really build for S&OP further. So what are some tips there? This is actually a framework I used when I had workshops with the top 40 leaders in the business I worked in. We called it trust and collaboration sessions, and really had conversations on, okay, what are trust blockers and what are trust builders? What type of behaviors do you see in the business? How do you perceive them? And from that we created key themes. We talked about personal life, what builds trust. Sports life, a lot of the examples came from sports. High team performance, high trust with your sportsmate. So yeah, start that conversation in the business. Talk about trust and distill key themes which people believe build or blocks trust, and then start working with them. Worked very well in the business when I did it, and it really created a lot of visibility, a lot of understanding about trust. Another thing is just going back to a tip to the speed of trust from Covey. Covey identified 13 trust behaviors. My suggestion is just take the first 3, talk straight, demonstrate respect, and create transparency, and make them part of your business conversation. Make them part of feedback after an S&OP cycle, after an S&OP meeting. Just ask, did we talk straight? Do we have examples where we demonstrated respect this whole cycle? Not specifically this meeting. Start that conversation, and with that conversation, openness will follow, and willingness to talk about trust. And again, just sitting in a meeting with each other is not alone, is not enough, I feel, to build trust. So this is an easy way to to define some behaviors and make them part of the conversation. Communication, that's a little bit more about training, and I mentioned 7 here. Again, refer back to Stephen Covey, which is the father of, there's 2 Coveys there, but the 7 habits of highly effective people. It's a lot about listening, about finding win-win, seeking to understand before understood. But to build better communication, first of all we need trust, but we also need some communication skills. Just simple listening techniques, storytelling, give and receive feedback, I find very important. And don't forget body language. Becoming conscious and control your body language and use it is an important communication tool. So that was the second one of my coaching framework. So coach the change. We have the initial S&OP behaviors, coach to sustain. We really build critical mass of trust and communication. And coaching for excellence goes a little bit deeper, and that's where the real coaching comes in, and under the surface coaching, where probably a lot of businesses won't have that in-house capability. You'll really need an external coach for that. The objective there is reduce individual and group obstacles that impact behaviors or performance negatively. But those obstacles, yeah, they can sit really deep. So coaching for excellence, I believe, needs some advanced coaching methods. And the GROW model is a famous and well-used coaching methodology. I use a simple methodology called AAA, which is all about awareness, acceptance, and action. Without awareness, people don't know actually how they behave or how other people perceive them to behave. Without acceptance of that, and the acceptance to improve, you can't get into action. So those coaching models can be used to coach individuals and make them really better. I also believe that this is a point in time where psychometric tools really help, and you need some advanced measurements. I show two tools here, mental toughness and lifestyles inventory. I'm accredited to use both. And basically they're simple questionnaires. With those questionnaires you get an inventory how people think, or how other people see them behave, so other people perceive them to behave. And a lot of the self-thinking drives behavior and drives action. So often the coaching conversation is about self-thought actually. But those are two tools. I mean, there are many other tools, but these are the tools I use. And coaching for excellence, going really into depth with an individual on what holds them back from behaving in certain ways. Yeah, need these type of tools to go deep enough. And just to give you an example there, first of all, it applies to any level. And these are two real-life examples from two people I coached. On the left side, a young professional, 26-year-old in an FMCG company. On the right side, a finance director in a leadership team of a multi-billion-dollar FMCG as well. So what we see, what we observe on, or what the peers or the manager observed in the young professional is really a lack of meeting participation, a lack of proactiveness, a lack of issue resolution. And on the right side, the finance director, what was observed is a lack of challenge to his peers or an MD, and yeah, being comfortable with the status quo, so not rocking the boat too much. Now this is what we observe. When I go deeper, the coaching conversation, the young professional, his behavior was driven by fear to lose his job because he was made redundant in his last job, but also a bit of fear of failure. He had some self-depreciating thoughts. So that's what we not see, and that's where a coach needs to start having the conversation about, okay, how this person can change that, those blockers, to change his behavior and make his behavior more effective. Again, we can't just tell to the young professional, okay, you need to participate more in this meeting, or you need to be more proactive. There's real fear in this person, and addressing that fear is, okay, time-consuming thing. Now this young professional, for example, when I start talking about his strengths, he's a great musician. He played for 10,000 people. And I'm like, were you confident playing for 10,000 people? Yeah, yes I am. Okay, great. Now let's see how we get that confidence of playing in 10,000 people as a musician back to the workforce. So, you know, this person has it in him, but how do we translate that to the workforce? So that's what the coaching conversation comes about. And the finance director, similar thing, lack of interpersonal confidence, confidence in their own ability. The coaching conversation really has to go in depth, like why do you think that, and what can you do to change that, to change your behavior. And it just shows that below the surface, that's where everything, yeah, that's where everything goes on. And if you come back to level 2 resistance in change management, where we started off with, and what we observe is oppositional avoiding behavior, criticizing people, lack of meeting participation, talk down S&OP process or people who run it, lack of discipline or transparency. That's what we observe. But below that is fear and our security needs against those basic principles of S&OP. The fear of failure. I don't like to share my KPIs because I have fear of failure. Lack of confidence, self-worth. Fear to lose control. All of a sudden all functions look at my numbers. So that's where level 2 resistance can come from. And again, we can't just say change your behavior. We need to go underneath the surface to understand what's happening there. And that's really what coaching for excellence is about, going under the surface and remove obstacles for people to behave and perform better. Now once you start doing that for every individual, you really increase the behavioral effectiveness and you create advanced behaviors in the meeting room, in S&OP meetings, but also in general. And you see performance improvements, and you see better emotional control, you see better decisions under pressure. These are all what I call more advanced S&OP behaviors, which coaching for excellence, and some people might have them, many not. They need help to develop those behaviors. And yeah, the groupthink, the biggest risk to corporate growth. If I go back to that FD from the last slide, he was afraid to challenge his MD. Groupthink is the phenomenon that one group of people don't dare to challenge each other anymore and therefore make irrational decisions. It's seen in Australia. This is a quote from a newspaper in October last year. It's seen as the biggest risk to corporate growth. So not challenging each other, not challenging the status quo, actually is seen as the biggest risk to corporate growth in Australia. Now, you need to have interpersonal confidence, you need to have emotional control, you need to have a growth mindset to be able to constructively challenge your own MD and your own peers. And that's where real value is in more effective S&OP behaviors, which I believe you can unlock with coaching for challenge. For excellence, sorry. Now, once we have more excellence in our behavior, S&OP effectiveness definitely will go up as well. Even if your process is immature, decisions under pressure, conversation, feedback will improve, and better decisions will be made with the information available. Because we listen better to each other, we debate better, we stay constructive, we keep our emotions under control. So S&OP effectiveness goes up as well. So for me, the final step in behavioral maturity and coaching or leading in behaviors is really to lead or coach in vision and culture. And for me, that's about making a conscious effort to use the effective S&OP behaviors, which you saw in coaching for excellence, to improve the company culture. So we saw before how company culture was defined by the values and the purpose. And actually, within S&OP, if we have those, we create those great behaviors, we can sort of transpose them or influence the organization. Of course, S&OP needs a certain maturity for this. Once you're have real great S&OP or IBP, where you have a rolling forecast and budget, so monthly you can check your status to the budget and your gaps. You have end-to-end value chain risk visibility, so you know basically every P&L line what the risk is around it, by having insights in your supplier and your customer. Once you have strategy integration, enterprise resource reallocation, so actually you decide on what projects are important and where you put your resources. Once you start great communication with your employees to actually tell them how your strategy is going, how your budget is going, and how they can help to close gaps in budget and strategy. Add to that behavioral and emotional competence. That's when you really have high levels of S&OP maturity. Once you have a certain level of S&OP maturity, it will become the most important management meeting or management structure in your business. It has to be. There's no other meeting where you discuss strategy, running forecast, resource allocation, and all those good things. So because it's become such an important management structure, it also can lead in displaying effective behaviors and transpose them to the organization. So the constructive S&OP behaviors, which we just showed in the coaching for excellence, they will amplify S&OP effectiveness, but will also impact the company culture for the better. Whilst if we have aggressive and defensive S&OP behaviors, that will limit S&OP effectiveness, and they will not support a sustainable company culture. So again, effective S&OP behaviors will support a sustainable company culture. And the more important, the better your S&OP process runs, the bigger your influence in the company culture will become. And that, I believe, has to be the goal of great S&OP as well. You have to start behave in a certain way which is good for S&OP, but over time it will actually influence your company culture for the better, because that's just how you behave in meetings. You listen to each other, you challenge each other constructively, you keep your emotions in check, all those good things. In a very mature S&OP environment where it's the most important meeting in the company, it will start actually influencing the company culture. And I believe in terms of behaviors in S&OP, that should be the ultimate aim of S&OP behaviors. Not only run effective and great S&OP itself, but actually influence a better company culture. I mean, it's a high expectations for S&OP, but I think we have to think big, and that should be our ambition. So a couple of tips there, and then I'm closing off. This is a great example from a CEO I worked for, who brought basically almost that Collins and Porras model together in one leadership model, where he defines core purpose, vision, values, behaviors. And once you define this as a leadership team in a business and you communicate this to everybody, and you mention that expected behaviors are trust people, provide open and honest feedback, listen carefully, evaluate options, you can start holding each other accountable and say, look, this has been defined as our business model, our alignment model, the way we behave as leaders. So starting with just a simple one-slider like this is a great reference to build upon from S&OP perspective and start giving each other feedback. Now, this might be a tough one, but hire, promote or let go. There's some research that says 50% of people naturally cooperate, 30% naturally behave selfishly. Now, if you don't have a great, job description and you just hire anybody, you might have 30% selfish people, or you get unlucky and you have 50% of them. So I believe that behaviors actually need to be part of job interviews, and they also need to be part of performance review. So it's not only about the results, it's also about the behaviors you show. And if you have both behavioral performance and your business performance is good, all right, you should be promoted and retained. If they're low, you need to let people go who don't behave right. And often in businesses we still only look at business performance and less at behaviors. My suggestion here is do both. If you want to build a sustainable culture, you need to be serious about behaviors, and you need to let people go that don't display the right behaviors. Now the last tip is really John Kotter, walk the walk, walk the talk. If you believe in certain behaviors and you define certain behaviors as to be right for S&OP or the business, you got to live them. There's a lot of lip service in businesses, and people read straight through that. So yeah, as Kotter says here, consciously attempt to become a living symbol of the new corporate culture. If you want to drive something, you want to drive change, you have to be the change. So that's really my final tip here. It's a lot to take in, I believe. So have a think about it. It's, I developed this thing only a couple of weeks ago. I'm very much open for feedback to improve this. And so have a think about it and provide me feedback if you wish. And rest me to say to wish you good luck on the rocky road to S&OP and behavioral excellence.
So thanks a lot, Niels. We're still here.
Yep, good.
You're not talking to yourself. We have some time for questions. I'm very much inspired by your story. I'm curious to see if there's any questions from the room.
Hi Niels, my name is Simon Tarastil. Yes, better?
Hi.
Not use the microphones at the table, but I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for your sharing your thoughts and some interesting triggers on S&OP. What strikes me, Niels, is that now making this more personal for the audience today about S&OP professionals, managers, experts. What do you? I notice in my work that it draws on many different skills, like different behaviors maybe as well, but also different skills. So I think everyone around the table here needs to have a minimum intelligence, let's say, because it's a complex process. But also you need to manage the, let's say, the emotional side of things, etc. How would you, or do you have a description of as the skill set of the S&OP professional? As against the, you've described a few participants in the S&OP process, but I'm just interested in the S&OP professional itself.
Yeah, well, that's quite a big question. I do actually, and in my S&OP maturity model, which I believe is more holistic, which addresses process, people capabilities, behaviors, and a couple of other things, I actually have defined the capabilities S&OP professional needs. It's a lot of functional knowledge, of course, from different functions and basic supply chain knowledge. But yeah, of course, the leadership skills need to be there. Project management skills need to be there. And then ideally, I like to see they need to lead in being proactive about crossing the silos. They have the most important thing in behavioral for an S&OP professional is be proactive in crossing the silos. You have to show that that's what it's all about. Because a lot of people, again, feel confident in their silo. So you have to show that, and that's one of the most important behavioral aspects, I believe, for an S&OP professional.
Thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Any other questions in the room?
My name is Dick Stoy, company line LL. I think what I want to hear a little bit is how much is it specific for the S&OP process, because I think it is in general, if you change an organization, you have this type of elements. S&OP in the company is already a burden for a lot of people, and if you then go to management and say, yeah, but we need also a very, let's say, intense change management process, I don't know whether that will help or not, but I think if you bring it like, if you have another project, you have a similar type of, let's say, a need for getting the people aligned and to motivate them. So could you maybe comment a little bit on my statement?
Yeah, so I agree. So most change management aspects there, I mean, it's not just S&OP, it's for any change. However, I feel that I see sometimes change management and behaviors, the practitioners say it as well, are not addressed enough in S&OP behaviors, and we keep saying they're important. So from change perspective, I use stakeholder mappings in the implementations I did, not as consultant, but just in a functional role, and just having a spreadsheet with your most important stakeholders and where you think they are on the change curve is, doesn't take a lot of resource. I think as a project manager, that's part of what you have to do. So if you're an S&OP manager and you implement S&OP, your stakeholder analysis, like your project plan, it's for me business as usual. That's part of the deal. Now the advanced behaviors, that's really a company decision to say, yeah, we want to improve our behaviors and improve our culture. I agree with that as well. My point I want to make here is that S&OP can become the main vehicle to display great behaviors and make decisions under pressure, because mature S&OP will become the most important management structure, without a doubt. So that's the time and the meeting to display the right behaviors. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions, Adriaan?
Yeah, this is Adrian. Hi. The question I had is that, so we're looking at a 30% success rate, and so we're doing all these things that I think we just went over. Does it go up, or do we need to just assume that 30% is kind of like the thing and we can only go below that?
No, we need to have a growth mindset and always think that we can do better. So the 30% is, you know, it comes from Cotter in 96, who mentioned that first, but he also has his 8-step approach, which if you apply all these steps, you know, your chance of succeeding improves dramatically. So yes, we can improve that 30%, but it's a pretty strong number, and it's good to remind people that, you know, we're in a massive change effort here, and S&OP never stops. You know, it's a continuous change effort, you can almost say. Well, that's how I see it, because it's relentless, comes back every month, and people need to stay motivated. So yeah, knowing where your stakeholders are in the change process and in that motivation process is maybe more important at the start in the implementation, but it remains important. But to be short, yeah, we can improve the 30% with great change management, and part of that is knowing your stakeholder and understanding resistance.
So there is any research done that says, you know, you can get to 60, or is it, you know, you do all these things, you do good, and then you get to, or is that difficult?
Well, the article I quoted, the quote from McKinsey, who says that communication, they have a great article which on business transformations, which I think 20 elements, and they actually articulate which element, how many times it improves success rate of change transformation. And I think communication was between 5 and 8, but I can share that article, so I can't give you a straight number, 60% or 70%. Yeah, you got to do some work and dive into the literature there, and yeah, understand change from all aspects. But I can share that article, which gave me a lot of insights in what impacts transformation, and you know what the multiplier is in success rate if you apply certain change elements.
Okay, good. That would be nice. Thank you.
Eric will remind me to.
Hello, it's Freddy. I'm working for Camira. In our company, we see S&OP alignment as the place where decisions are to be taken, and we struggle with that. Listening to you, should we kind of like reconsider and more be realistic and say is the place where we have those communicated?
Sorry. So what's the question? It's an issue you're stating, or is it
the question is the S&OP alignment as a place for decision taking or versus communication?
Oh, look, S&OP, the S&OP meetings, you know, you present information, and ideally you come up with issues on business issues to improve business performance and plans. So definitely decisions need to be taken. What I'm saying is that communication out of an executive S&OP meeting, for example, is not been addressed enough in S&OP. It's sort of an undervalued part of S&OP, and that's what my article will be about in July. I'm saying that with the decisions you make in S&OP, you can't make the black hole. The senior leaders need to communicate what they have decided, refocus their employees, engage their employees, also with good news. And let them understand how they can help the business close the gaps to budget, to strategy, improve on project performance. That's all communication output. So you make the decisions in the S&OP meeting, but the output of that needs to be properly communicated, and you need an S&OP communication plan for that.
Yeah, I think one of the things you see is that if you build scenarios, then you know, you kind of like, well, we make two scenarios, one it goes left and the other one goes right, and these are the risks here and these are the benefits, and you work like that. Then you kind of like force them to take a decision, and so it's communication, because you know, later on when it doesn't work out, you can go back and say, well, you know, these were the risks, and you know, we all looked at them and said, well, this is the plan forward, and so I think it's communication and it's decision making at the same time, and then once that's taken, it's making sure everybody is aligned.
Exactly. So if you decide to go left, the business needs to know you're going left. And if you go right, you need to communicate to the business you're going right and what that means for people. And yeah, my point is that aspect of S&OP is undervalued and not applied enough yet, that output communication part.
Good. Are there any other questions? Okay. Yeah. More question? Yeah.
Hello, I have a question about one of your slides on there were 3 plans, then the growing of the organization. Yeah. Why is the most mature version about the behavior of the organization? Why is that not the first one, like the soil, the breeding ground for the plant to grow?
Fair enough. I did sort of not put them in a particular order, but I started with S&OP Foundation, and what I then added to that is, for me, the 7 maturity elements or key maturity elements for any great S&OP process, which if you talk about you're doing a great job, then you need to have all those elements. Now I put probably behavioral last and communication, those 2 last, because it's actually not often part of the scope. My point is it needs to be part of the scope. If you really want to have excellence in decision making under pressure and debating information, it needs to be there. But you're right, probably it needs to be foundation, and in one way I'm saying that as well because, you know, trust and communication is the foundation of S&OP, but I put them there in no really particular order, to be honest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then I'd really like to thank you, Niels, for taking your time to speak to us. I'm very surprised that we made this work as well as we did.
That's good.
Just to everyone, we also recorded the session. I think we will publish the version online. Niels, if there's anything you want to share to the group, we can communicate afterwards. Thank you very much, and hope to be in contact with you again.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and again feel free to contact. You know, my business is True Bridges, but I'm writing a blog, Supply Chain Trend, so have a look at that, and yeah, join the communication and you know, my thoughts as well. I'm always open for feedback and to improve my thoughts and S&OP in general, I would say. So have a good day, and bye bye from Australia.
Cheers. Okay. We gaan even verder met koffie en 11:30 krijgen we de presentatie. Dat even zijn. Goedjes Niels.
See ya.